Hello everyone, so today we're going to talk about the urinary system. So urinary system includes your kidneys. They look reddish brown in color, and the location is retinoperitoneal. So that means they're going to be underneath the peritoneal membrane. And they're muscular tubes that are going to take urine from the kidneys down to the urinary bladder. That's another muscular sac down there. And when that's full, you can excrete the urine through the urethra. But I want you to know that your right kidney sits lower down than the left one, and the reason for that is because of the liver. You have a really big organ, which is liver right here, and it's going to cause the right kidney to be lower down. And the location for the kidneys is from T12 to L3, so lumbar 3. So you can see here that your right kidney is lower than the left one. So the functions of the urinary system. So one is a regulation. It's going to regulate the blood volume and blood pressure by adjusting the volume of water lost in urine. And also another one is elimination of waste products. So it's going to excrete excess water. If you're drinking a lot of water, you're going to urinate more. Another function would be to produce hormones. So we learned that it's going to produce erythropoietin. So that's one of the hormones. Erythropoietin is going to be produced if you need more red blood cells in your body. And on this picture, what I need you to notice that you have your abdominal aorta. It's going down. Renal artery is going to come off of the abdominal aorta. It's going to go to the kidneys. And renal artery is going to come off of the abdominal aorta, and it's taking oxygenated blood from the heart to the kidneys. And we learned that the kidneys, they're going to filter blood. So they're going to filter excess salt, water, any metabolic waste, which I'm going to tell what that is. So these are going to be filtered in the kidneys, and the blood comes out of the kidneys through the renal vein. And the renal vein goes back in and drains into inferior vena cava. So if I ask which blood vessel is high in oxygen, since renal artery is bringing blood to the kidneys, oxygenated blood, so that's going to be high in oxygen. And renal vein, it's going to be low in oxygen, and it's going to be high in carbon dioxide. So here's another question. Which blood vessel is going to be lower in waste product? And that's going to be renal vein, because the blood, when it comes out, it has all the excess it has all the waste products removed. So it's going to be purified blood. Renal vein is going to be high in carbon dioxide, but it's going to be low in waste products. So think about it. Artery is bringing oxygenated blood. Their kidney is going to filter the blood. So the blood is entering the kidney high in oxygen, low in carbon dioxide. It's leaving low in oxygen, high in carbon dioxide. But when it's entering, it also has all these waste products. So once it goes through the kidney is going to remove the waste products. And then when it leaves through the renal vein, it's going to be low in waste products. Another function of the kidneys is it's going to regulate electrolyte and water concentration. So like I said, if you drink more water, you're going to be urinating more. And also going to maintain the pH balance by regulating hydrogen ion levels, acidity of the body. So two major waste products, metabolic waste products that are being excreted by kidneys are urea and uric acid. Urea is a major organic waste product that we excrete from breakdown of old proteins, and uric acid is breakdown of old nucleic acids. So as the protein breaks down in urea, called blood urea nitrogen bond, it can be excreted out. But however, if there's an issue with your kidneys are sick, urea can build up in your blood, and that can cause a lot of symptoms, vomiting, weakness. It can be toxic to you, so if there's too much of it in your body. So if your kidneys are not functioning properly, then the person has to do dialysis. So some more functions of the urinary system is it's going to eliminate, like I just said, urea and ammonia, and it's going to help the liver detoxify poisons, and also going to break down products of drugs. So this is if your kidneys are not working, that means that it cannot really clean your blood. So blood is going to be removed for cleansing from your body, from arteries, and it's going to go through this machine called dialyzer, and clean blood is going to be returning to the body. So this is the work that your kidneys were supposed to be doing, but if they're not working properly, then the person has to go on dialysis. Okay, so we're still continuing with the functions of the urinary system. So it's going to produce hormones, and one we learned was erythropoietin, which is needed for production of red blood cells. And then there are two more. One is cholesterol and then renin. So renin is going to regulate body fluids. And then cholesterol is needed for calcium. Cholesterol is going to be synthesized by your kidneys. It's a hormone that's derivative of vitamin D3. And it's going to stimulate calcium ion absorption by the intestinal epithelium. And there are a lot of steps that happen in between. You don't have to worry about different steps. Just know that there are these three hormones that are produced by kidneys. So let's do a quick review of the function. So it's going to maintain a regulate electrolyte and water concentration, and also hydrogen ions, which is going to maintain the pH balance sent by kidneys. It's going to eliminate the waste products, urea, ammonia, drug breakdown products, any poisons. It's going to help the liver break down any poisons. And also going to produce hormones. So there are a lot of functions that kidneys have. Okay, so let's look at the gross anatomy of the kidney first. First structure that we have is hilum. Hilum is where all the blood vessels or tubes go in or out of the kidneys. They're going to enter or leave the kidney at hilum. So this is going to be hilum right here, where all the tubes are entering the kidney or the blood vessels are entering the kidney. That's hilum. Kidneys are surrounded by connective tissue called renal capsule. And also, in addition to that, there is going to be a lot of fat around the kidneys for protection. You have fat around your heart for protection. It's going to provide a cushioning and some protection. So if we cut into the kidney, so that's the hilum. That's where all the tubes are entering or leaving the kidney. That's the hilum. So if we cut into the kidney, you're going to have first two structures here, cortex and medulla. So this is going to be renal cortex, outer layer, and inner layer is called renal medulla. So whenever I talk about this, I always say that you use these words, medulla and cortex, a lot. So what we call our outermost part of our brain is cerebral cortex. So you have the cortex word again there, and the innermost part of the brain is called medulla oblongata. So inner part is called medulla. And then here you have the hilum. Okay, so let's look at the internal anatomy of the kidney. So when you look inside the kidney, you're gonna notice that the kidney is divided into these lobes. Just like your liver has lobes, your lungs have lobes, and these lobes look like pyramids. So these are called the renal pyramids. And these renal pyramids are going to be subdivided. So you're gonna have these subdivisions here, and these are called minor calyx. And now these three subdivisions on this side, we can see we have three subdivisions and they're coming together right here. So this part is called major calyx. So here you have these two coming together. This is major calyx. And then you have this enlarged area here, and that's called renal pelvis. And then you have the muscular tube that's gonna take urine down to the urinary bladder. That's called ureter. In between the renal pyramids, you have the renal column. So these are renal column. Okay, so let's look at the blood supply to kidneys. So we know that renal artery is bringing the blood inside the kidney, and it's going to be filtered inside the kidney. Waste products such as urea, it's going to be carried down through the ureter to the urinary bladder. Purified blood is going to go out through the vein. So this renal artery, it's if you follow that, it's going to subdivide, and it's going to subdivide into smaller and smaller branches, and it makes it to the nephron. Nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. So here we take a section of the pyramid and we zoom in on that. And then you have the nephrons here. So these are the branches of the renal artery, and it was further divided until it reached the nephron here. So this is the functional unit of the kidney. This is what's actually filtering the blood. And this is going to filter the blood, make urine, and then urine is going to travel down to the collecting duct. So this is the collecting duct right here. Let's look at this picture. So renal artery, it brought the oxygenated blood here, and it started to subdivide. So subdivided here. Once it's subdivided, we call it segmental artery. Continues and subdivides again here. And when subdividing, it's passing between these lobes. Inter means between, and lobar means, lobes. It's passing between the lobes. So we call it interlobar arteries. And then it's going to go around the lobe, and once it goes around the lobe, it's called arcuate arteries. And these arcuate arteries, they go around the lobe, and they're smaller arteries that are coming off of those. And those are called cortico-radiate arteries. And then we have a zoomed in picture here. So these cortico-radiate arteries, these are going to go connect with the nephron. And this is the nephron that we have. So what I just went over, I have all that written out for you. So we started at renal artery, and then we went to segmental arteries. And from segmental arteries, we have interlobar arteries that pass between the lobes. And then it goes around the lobes, kind of in circles around. That's called arcuate artery. And then it comes off into smaller arteries, and it's called cortico-radiate arteries. It's going to go into the nephron. Before it enters the nephron, it has another name that's called afferent arteriole. So it's going to branch in smaller arteries, and when we have arteries that are branching into smaller arteries, we call them arteriole. So this is called afferent arteriole. And then we have the nephron. So the blood, it's coming in, it's high in waste products. It's gonna come in through renal artery, you're gonna go through all these arteries and the vessels, and it's gonna enter the nephron. So nephron, I said, is what's the functional unit of the kidney. So nephron, the structure and the functional unit of the kidney, and there are about 1 million per kidney. So when we say that your kidneys are filtering the blood, it's really the nephron that's doing that. So there are 1 million per kidney. These are and they're going to filter the blood. So let's go back. So we went through the artery, and then we got to the nephron. So once we enter the nephron, there's glomerulus, there's efferent arteriole, and there's vertebral capillaries. So what we have going on here, we have portal system. Blood is going to flow through the kidney, and it's going to involve a portal system. And in most part of our body, we have arteries that subdivide into capillaries, and those capillaries come together and form the veins. So that's what we have. But in kidneys, we have this portal system, which means that we have 2 capillary beds in a row. So in this case, artery is going to subdivide into capillary bed. So that capillary bed is going to join together, form a portal vessel, and that portal vessel is going to subdivide again into second capillary bed, which is right here. It's going to these vertebral capillaries are going to come together and form a vein. And then we have same steps for the veins. We have venules, interlobular veins, arcuate veins, interlobar veins, and renal vein. So let's look at this part. Let's look at the nephron first. So this entire thing is called a nephron. This is one nephron here. So first I'm going to identify the parts of the nephron. So first thing that we have, it's called glomerular capsule. So that's the very first part of the nephron, glomerular capsule, and the old name for that is the Bowman's capsule. So this is the glomerular capsule here, and inside you have glomerular capillaries here. And then we have the convoluted tubule and we have the proximal tubule. So this here, this is the proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal because it's near the beginning of the nephron, and convoluted because it's kind of twisted together. So this is the proximal convoluted tubule. And then we have this loop. This is called loop of Henle or nephron loop. And when it goes down, this is the descending limb, and then it's gonna go up. This is the ascending limb of the nephron loop. Then it's going to continue, and the last segment of the nephron, this part here, this is another tubule, and this is called distal convoluted because it's also twisted together tubule, and this is the end of the nephron. It's at a distant end, unlike the proximal convoluted tubule. So this is the last part of the nephron, and then it's going to connect with this tube here. So whatever fluid is going to enter this tube, it's going to be called urine. This is the collecting duct here. Technically, it's not part of the nephron, but it's going to be included on the picture whenever you look at the nephron. So now let's look at the blood supply of the nephron. So what we have here, we have the glomerulus or the glomerular capillaries. And then around it, we have the glomerular capsule here. And then what's taking the blood into the nephron, because we need to filter the blood inside the nephron, is called afferent arteriole. So afferent arteriole, this is the beginning of the portal system. It's going to subdivide into capillaries called the glomerular capillaries. And then these glomerular capillaries, they're going to join together and they're going to form a portal vessel, and that's going to be called efferent arteriole. And how you can remember this, think of A. So in alphabet, A comes before E. So afferent arteriole is going to take the blood into the glomerular capillaries, and then those are going to come together and form a portal vessel that's going to be called efferent arteriole. If you follow the efferent arteriole, you're going to notice that it's going to subdivide into these capillaries. And these are called peritubular capillaries. These are going to wrap around the renal tubule. So peri means around. These are going to wrap around. And then what's going to happen if you keep following it, it's going to come together. So it's going to come together and it's going to form a vein or venule. And then you have the venule, interlobular vein. Then you continue with the arcuate vein and interlobar vein. So that's the big picture. That's what's going on. So we have the portal system there. And again, the portal system is when there are two capillary beds in a row. So artery is going to subdivide into a capillary bed. The capillary bed is going to join together to form a portal vessel, and that's going to be efferent arteriole in this case, and that's going to again subdivide into second capillary bed, which is peritubular capillaries, and then those are going to come together and form the vein. So histology of the glomerular capsule is going to be made of simple squamous epithelium, again because the filtration needs to take place there, and simple squamous are tiny cells where the fluid can go across or diffuse across. So that's the filtration of the blood is going to happen here. So we have simple squamous epithelium there. So on this picture, you can see blood is entering through afferent arteriole. You have the capillary bed here, glomerular capsule, glomerular capillaries, and then around it you have the Volman's capsule or glomerular capsule. And then the blood is going to go out through the efferent arteriole, which can again subdivide into peritubular capillaries. Histology of proximal convoluted tubule. It's going to be made of simple cuboidal epithelium, and it's going to have microvilli to increase the surface area. And this is where reabsorption of water, ions, organic nutrients are going to happen. And I'm going to give you a little bit more on this. And we will look at each process that's taking place there. So secretion, filtration, reabsorption. The microvilli that increase the surface area are going to be located on the apical surface. Nephron loop, it's made of simple squamous and simple cuboidal epithelium. So you can find both of them there. And there is also reabsorption happening there of ions and water. Distal convoluted tubule, it's going to be made of simple cuboidal epithelium, and there's secretion happening here. So there was reabsorption proximal and reabsorption in the loop, nephron loop, but there's secretion of ions and acids and drugs and toxins are happening here. So on this picture, you can see glomerular filtration happening right here. Reabsorption happening through the proximal convoluted tubule, some happening in the loop of Henle, and then the distal convoluted tubule, it's the tubular secretion, which means it's going to go to the collecting duct. The way you can differentiate between the distal convoluted tubule and proximal convoluted under the microscope is the proximal is going to have microvilli. Collecting tube or the duct, it's going to be simple cuboidal epithelium, and there is some reabsorption of water there, and there is reabsorption or secretion of the ions, and it's under hormonal control. Okay, so we have the nephron here. We have the blood entering through the afferent arteriole. You have a capillary bed inside glomerular capillaries, and then you have the portal vessel, that's efferent arteriole, and that's going to continue turn into peritubular capillaries, which you can't see here. And on this picture, what you can see, you have cross-section of each. You can kind of compare the histology of proximal convoluted tubule with the distal. So you have microvilli here. You don't have microvilli for distal convoluted tubule. They both have cuboidal cells. Here you can see the capillary of glomerulus or glomerular capillaries. This is where filtration takes place. Three major processes are happening in the nephron. So we have filtration, we have reabsorption, and we have secretion. Filtration is going to take place in glomerular. So on this picture, you can see that the blood is going to flow into the glomerular capillaries through the afferent arteriole. And then you have these arrows. These are showing that some of the fluid that's going to enter the glomerular capillaries, it's going to start to squirt out, and it's going to start to flow into the proximal convoluted tubule. So that's the process of filtration happening between the glomerulus and in the glomerular capsule. So you have the capsule around it. And just to remind you, this proximal convoluted tubule is made up of simple cuboidal epithelium cells, and we learned that when we went over chapter 2, when you had to look at simple cuboidal, you had a slide that had kidney tubules on it. So when the fluid is being squirted out of the glomerular capillaries, it's both. It's bad and good stuff. It's not just the bad stuff. You know, if it was me, I would assume when the filtration of blood is happening in the kidneys, all the bad stuff or the waste products are being filtered out in the bloodstream. So when the filtration happens here in the kidneys, so the first part of the nephron, from the glomerular capillaries, like I said before, not just urea and uric acid is being squirted out, also some of the nutrients and some of the amino acids, some of the stuff that your body needs is being squirted out. So that's why we have the second step here that's called reabsorption. So body is going to take some of the filtered molecules back. So we have here is proximal convoluted tubule, and on this you have these arrows, and these are pointing, towards the bloodstream, towards the peritubular capillaries. So on the picture that I showed you before, it had the proximal tubule, and then it had these peritubular capillaries that were wrapped around. So good stuff that needs to come out of the proximal tubule that was squirted out by the glomerular capillaries, it needs to come back in the bloodstream. So it's going to come out of the proximal convoluted tubule, and it's going to go back into the peritubular capillaries and back into the bloodstream. And that step is called tubular reabsorption. So at this point, body's taking back some of the good stuff that it needs. Next step we have is secretion. So I just said that here we have both. We have uric acid, urea, waste products going in here. We also have some nutrients and amino acids going in here. Amino acid nutrients, they start coming back in the bloodstream from the proximal tubule into the peritubular capillaries. So if all the good stuff came out of the proximal convoluted tubule, what remains here is all the waste products. So that's what we have here, remaining inside the renal proximal convoluted tubule. And those waste products, they're going to come down through the descending loop of the nephron, and then we have this loop of Henle, and then they go back up through ascending limb of the nephron loop. And then you have some more arrows, and these arrows are pointing towards the distal tubule, distal convoluted tubule. So what is happening here, certain specific chemicals are being transported out of the peritubular capillaries into the distal convoluted tubule. So additional bad stuff that's in the peritubular capillaries that your body wants to get rid of. So for example, drugs maybe, or hydrogen ions or some salt, it's going to be transported back into the distal tubule, distal convoluted tubule. And one example of the drugs would be penicillin. So penicillin, it's really rapidly moved from your bloodstream. So that's one of the reasons you have to take it multiple times a day, because it's really rapidly removing it from your body even before liver have the chance to break it down. So once the tubular secretion happens, the fluid that's gonna flow into this collecting duct, it's gonna be called the urine. So that's the urine here. So to summarize this, I have another picture here that's actually showing you the peritubular capillaries. So we have the first step here. We have the filtration happening here, and everything is being filtered out, whether it's nutrients or if it's urea or if it's uric acid or amino acids. And that fluid is going to enter the proximal convoluted tubule. Then we have the reabsorption happening, and at this point, the body can reclaim any of the chemicals or any of the nutrients that it wants back. And we're going to have arrows from the proximal convoluted tubule, arrows going from there to the peritubular capillaries. So we have that here. So this is body reclaiming anything that it needs. So that's tubular reabsorption. Then it's going to continue to move through the nephron loop, through the descending and then the ascending limb. And then the fluid that remains here, it's all the bad stuff because the good stuff has been taken out. It's going to go into the distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule, when it gets there, this is your body's last chance to put anything that it wants to get rid of for excretion. So it can't put any of the drugs, any of the other chemicals that it wants to get rid of, for example, salt, into the distal convoluted tubule, and that's tubular secretion. And then that's going to collect with a collecting duct, and it's going to be excreted out of the body. So that's the summary of what's happening here. And then I have the same picture here, and once it enters the urine collecting duct, it's gonna flow out into the renal papilla. So let's look at that next. Okay, so this is a whole picture of what is happening. So this is showing the collecting duct right here. So we had your renal artery, and it started dividing into segmental, then interlobar, then arcuate, and then into cortico-radiate, and then into afferent arterioles that went into the nephron. And then on the previous slide, I showed you all the steps that it goes through when it's in the nephron, and then it comes out of the collecting duct. So it went through all these steps. We had filtration, we had reabsorption, we had secretion, tubular secretion, and then it came into the collecting duct, and then it went out through the collecting duct, which is right here, and it entered this part here, that's renal papilla. So it's going to enter this part, and that's called renal papilla. It's going to enter the renal papilla, then it's going to come into the minor calyx, and these minor calyx are coming together here and becomes the major calyx. Major calyx is going to flow into the renal pelvis, and once it's in the renal pelvis, it can go out through the ureter. And I have that written out for you. So urine from collecting tubules and ducts passes into minor calyx to major calyx to renal pelvis. And then the renal pelvis is going to connect to the ureter, and then where the ureter is connecting to the kidney, where it's entering the kidney, it's called hilum. So it's entering at the hilum. Ureter is a muscular tube that's going to push the urine using peristaltic and contractions into the urinary bladder. So it doesn't really rely upon gravity. If you were standing upside down, the urine is still being pushed through the ureter and it's going to go into the urinary bladder. So we have the ureter there, and it's going to go connect with the urinary bladder. That's another muscular sac there. And its urinary bladder is located behind the pubic symphysis, so behind your pelvis, true pelvis. And the histology we looked at, urinary bladder, it's made up of transitional epithelium, and it's transitional because the appearance is going to change depending on if your urinary bladder is empty or full. That's the urethra. Urinary bladder is going to temporarily store the urine until you're ready to excrete. And ureters, they are going to enter the urinary bladder at angles. It's coming from both sides and kind of at the angle. It's not straight down. So here on this x-ray, you can see they took some dye and they put it in the urinary system, and it's highlighting the different structures or different parts of the urinary system. As the urinary bladder fills, the ureters, they squeeze shut, and there's this triangle. It's called trigon. And this is a triangle inside the bladder with the opening to the ureters on both sides. And then also the urethral canal. So let's look at the anatomy of the urinary bladder in males, and you can see the prostate glands. So let's look at the anatomy of urinary bladder. This is in males because you can see the prostate gland here. So there are folds inside, just like there are folds inside the stomach. Those are called rugae, and there's this detrusor muscle. It's found in the urinary bladder. Another thing you want to notice, there are two muscular valves at the end of the urethral canal. So there's one here, and this is called the internal urethral sphincter, and then this is the external urethral sphincter. So you have two valves, and this internal one is involuntary and external is voluntary. So just same as the digestive system when I was talking about the sphincters. When you really have to go, that means the internal urethral sphincter is already open and it's only the external one that's closed. Urethra is going to transport urine from urinary bladder to outside of body. Urethra is going to pass through the prostate gland in males. So again, on this picture, you can see the detrusor muscle here, the circular muscle. It's going to create the internal urethral sphincter, and then a skeletal muscle is going to create the external urethral sphincter. Smooth muscle is under involuntary control, so that's why your internal urethral sphincter is under involuntary control. And then your external, since the skeletal muscle, is under voluntary control. On this picture, you can see the ureters are coming down at an angle connecting to the urinary bladder, and then this triangle is called trigon, and then there is the internal urethral sphincter, urethral canal, and external urethral sphincter, and prostate gland in males. We are going to look at prostate gland, ductus deferens, and the seminal gland when we talk about reproductive system. When it passes through the prostate gland, is called prostatic urethra. In males, it conveys both urine and semen, so it's pathway for both. It serves urinary purpose and also the reproductive. So the word for urination is mecnutrition, and as the bladder fills up with urine, it's going to stretch, and that's going to be the stimulus for the reflex for you to urinate. Okay. So sensory nerve fibers, they're going to carry messages to the sacrospinal cord. So the neurons are going from the urinary bladder to the sacrospinal cord. And that's your peripheral nervous system, so sensory nerve fibers. And then it's going to enter the spinal cord and go to the brain. And when the neurons are part of the central nervous system, they're found completely within the central nervous system. They're called interneurons. They're going to relay the message from the spinal cord to the brain. And you're going to get this message or sense of that you're getting full. And then the motor nerve fibers, they take the information from your brain and they bring it to the urinary bladder. So motor nerve fibers, they're going to carry information from your brain to the detrusor muscles of the urinary bladder, which is under involuntary control. And That's what's making the internal urethral sphincter. So it's going to open, and then that's involuntary again. And then the urination is going to occur if you voluntarily open the external urethral sphincter. So they both have to be relaxed at the same time for the urination to take place. So there's a few disorders I want to mention for the urinary system. One is kidney stones. Now, don't confuse kidney stones with gallstones. Gallstones are when the bile solidifies. Kidney stones, they're different. They're made up of calcium oxalate, and they can obstruct the flow of the urine into the ureters. Now, what they can do ultrasound, and the ultrasound beam can shatter these kidney stones, and the person can pass these through the urethral canal. It doesn't really require surgery. Gallstones, it requires surgery. So let's say if someone's kidneys are not working properly, they're going to, so the purpose of kidneys is to filter out the waste material. So if the kidneys are not working, these waste materials are not being excreted out, they start building up in your blood, and that's called uremia. Uremia. Emia means in the blood. So the waste products start building up in the blood, and in that case, they might need dialysis or another kidney. Then we have another infection. This is called cystitis. Itis means inflammation. This is inflammation of the urinary bladder. And that can happen maybe due to a UTI. UTI stands for urinary tract infection. And it's most common in females compared to males. And one of the reasons for that is that in women, the urethral canal is short. So there's a short distance from the surface of the body to the urinary bladder, versus males, they have longer urethral canal. So that's why it's more common in females. When there's a UTI, there's a parenteral urination, and the word for that is dysuria. Then we have two more. We have urethral stenosis, and we have urethral stenosis. So read the words very carefully. We have URETE, and here we have TH, so urethral. Stenosis is narrowing. The narrowing of the urethra is called urethral stenosis, and narrowing of the urethra is called urethral stenosis. And again, that can cause painful urination as well. And that is the urinary system.